welcome once again to Failure to Series, the Failure to Franchise spin-off show looking at failed TV pilots. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris.
And we got, I don't know, I was about to say we got a fun one today, but I don't want to I don't want to go out on a limb here or anything. But we have an interesting one today. This is one that you and I just found out about fairly recently. And it's because we're looking at a pilot. This is going to be the case with actually quite a few of the failed TV pilots we have listed for ourselves, but a pilot based on a movie. This is a pretty big trend in TV. There's been very successful TV shows based on films, and then there's been a lot of failed ones. And there's been some that have just kind of floated there in the middle. I think of something like, did you know there was an Uncle Buck sitcom starring Kevin Meaney that was on the USA Network for a little bit?
That sounds unfortunate.
Yeah, well, yeah. That is the case. But I mean, that got past the pilot, it got on air. And I can think of other ones like that, like the Ferris Bueller sitcom from the 90s, which was also atrocious. And but this one today, we're looking at 2007's Not Another High School Show, which you might be able to guess from the title is based on 2001's comedy movie, Not Another Teen Movie. I guess we should talk about that briefly, because that's obviously the inspiration for this failed show.
The inspiration and also just the entire creative team from the movie was brought on board for the show. So as Trev said, Not Another Teen Movie is from 2001. It was directed by Joel Gallen, written by Mike Bender, and actually a bunch of writers, but he's the main guy. And it was produced by Neil H. Moritz. That name should ring a bell for some people that know the film industry. Moritz is the guy in charge of the Fast and Furious franchise. Since day one, actually. He was on board with the first movie. There was a little bit of conflict recently with the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff that I guess he didn't get along with The Rock. That seems to be a trend in that franchise, but in general, I don't know exactly how much he's involved with Fast 9 or 10, but regardless, Neil Moritz produced Not Another Teen Movie. By the way, I want to mention Joel Gallen and Mike Bender. They don't have a lot to their filmography other than MTV and Comedy Central, which definitely plays a role in how the show turned out.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at their filmographies, it's a lot of directing, and writing for award shows and specials on those networks, like Comedy Central roasts or MTV award shows. That's where Mike Bender and him and Joel Gallen get a lot of work. And I really quickly too, I want to say about Neil Moritz, just because I feel like I'll feel like I failed my community if I don't mention this. You said that film fans would know him from the Fast and Furious. Horror fans knew him before that, because before becoming the Fast and Furious guy, he produced the I Know What You Did Last Summer series, and then also Urban Legends, both that and its sequel. So he was kind of like a big name in the teen slasher post Scream cycle for a bit there too.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you're wondering, why a TV show based on this? Well, let me give you a couple of stats here. The budget for Not Another Teen Movie was $15 million. Domestically, it made $38 million, and worldwide, $66.5 million. Now, that's not a crazy amount of money, but that quadrupled the budget and more. So it was definitely a hit. I know it was a big hit on DVD. That's when I had first seen it. It was kind of a movie that was... again, I was a little younger, so I couldn't go see it in the theaters at that time. So I did see it on DVD afterwards. And also, this is a big stat. This movie was released right after the Scary Movie spoof phenomenon. So when I say the Scary Movie, I mean the actual movie Scary Movie. That came out in 2000, and then they rushed out a sequel, Scary Movie 2, for 2001. And that's where Not Another Teen Movie hit. So obviously, people were in the mood for spoof movies, and I guess the trend was in full effect at that point.
Yeah, and I didn't really go look back on the entire chronology of these kind of spoof parody movies, but this is a movie that you and I actually can talk, or could talk quite a bit about, probably if we want to, even though we're gonna just briefly talk about it and go into the show.
Sure.
But you and I just revisited this movie recently in one of our movie nights, and it was a movie that, if you remember, I was a little more trepidatious about revisiting, because I even told you guys that I had not been a fan of this in the past. So when this came out in 2001, I don't think I saw it in the theater. I think like you, I probably first saw it on DVD. And I remember not really liking it. And then when we revisited it, I told you guys, wow, I like this a lot more. I don't know if it was just the passage of time, or if I just needed some. And I thought about that a little bit more. And I think what it was, and this is why I brought up the chronology and why that matters, I think at the time I wasn't super into it because it's not as good as the Naked Gun movies or the Hot Shots movies, right? So I was just inherently comparing it to that because that's what to me like a spoof film was, and I wasn't even sure I liked it as much as the first couple scary movies. And then I was thinking maybe I like it now because in retrospect, it's obviously way better than all the Friedberg and Seltzer crap that followed. You know,
Yes.
the superhero movie and the date movie, and I was thinking like besides scary movie sequels, is this like the last? Was Not Another Teen Movie kind of the last actually somewhat decent spoof movie that had like a big theatrical release? I think it might be. I think after this we go into just nothing but junk where it's not jokes, right? It's just like, oh look, there's Iron Man and he's meeting Borat. It's like that's not a joke, you know. And at least Not Another Teen Movie was being a little bit more playful. And as you said, like when we revisited it, you know, Chris Evans is great in it.
Yep.
The whole cast is actually doing pretty well in it, and I found it a lot more charming revisiting it. Maybe it was also just that I needed some distance from the kind of genre and tropes it was parodying, and it was kind of nostalgic to go back and revisit that a little bit.
That's a good point because I actually did look back and see when that like the big trend of like really bad spoof movies happened, and it was 2007.
Yeah.
It was from 2007 till about 2011, I would say, and it was just garbage after garbage after garbage. So like spoof movies kind of lost their I guess charm is the right word that you're saying. You're right. It was just kind of like, hey, remember this? Hey, remember Iron Man? Hey, remember this and that and all this? And then it was just like there was no like, jokes. Effort. Yeah. Like it was fun because Not Another Teen Movie was basically a spoof on She's All That. Which a movie I love. I love that movie. It's a great teen rom-com. But it was the core of that movie was She's All That. Obviously things sprinkled in between, but it was like you said, great performances. Chris Evans is awesome in that movie. If anybody's wondering if they should revisit Not Another Teen Movie, I absolutely think you should. Especially just to see that, you know, where Captain America started his like career. It is quite he plays such a great asshole.
Yeah.
Like he really does.
I mean, I could watch just the GIF forever of him looking at the picture of himself in the hallway and doing the exact same pose from it. It's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
He's definitely the standout in that film. But I mean, I really like, you know, Jamie Presley was great.
Oh, yeah.
We'll actually talk about her a little later. I want
sure.
to a little bit. You know, and like, Eric Christian Olsen, who we'll also talk about. It's just everyone was, it was Kyler Lee, who's now, you know, people know from Supergirl. Like I said, everyone is having fun. It's like one of your last chances to see a non-crazy, actually fun Randy Quaid. I guess he was probably still crazy, but not like modern day crazy Randy Quaid. You know,
not in like a bunker with a gigantic beard. Yeah.
And as you said, it was like She's All That, but then bringing in at just the right time too, right? Bringing in all these other big teen movies that happened recently in just the 90s. Like the 90s had a lot of teen movies, and then it was also going back to, of course, exploit the 80s, which was the biggest period of teen movies with all the John Hughes stuff, and it was able to bring in all that and had the fun little Molly Ringwald cameo. It was one of the first spoofs. It was one of the first times I can remember, and this is, I don't even know if it's ever happened again, but the ability to actually bring in a cast member from one of the movies they were parodying to basically play that same character again, the guy from Varsity Blues. It was like I said, I'm surprised I didn't like it at the time, because now looking at it now, like I said, it's actually pretty good.
It's funny because the movie actually, like, I don't want to say the movie is iconic. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, there's some scenes that I remember more from Not Another Teen Movie than I do that the actual movie that they're spoofing.
I know, isn't that weird? Like, I was just thinking, even something like Chris Evans coming out covered in whipped cream, right? Like, I think like you think of that spoof more than you think of the actual bit from Varsity Blues.
Mine is the 10 Things I Hate About You when he's on the bleachers and he's like, Janie's got a gun, and then like they all run. That's anyway, that movie is,
and like, and also like you can't like you know a movie is like got something when it does get latched into the pop culture mind sphere.
Yeah.
And now whenever you see a slow clap in anything, you just instantly think of Not Another Teen Movie. Like that movie is like synonymous with that.
Yes. Now. Yeah. It was honestly, absolutely, listeners, go back and watch that movie.
It is.
It's a fun time, and watch it with some friends as much as you can during COVID times. Like we managed to do it with 5 buddies all together on Zoom. So just sync it up, press start. It's a really fun time. But going into the show, Not Another High School Show, as you can see, that's the reason why they thought, hey, let's make a show about this. Now,
and this is Comedy Central, we should point out, which is still like the Viacom banner. So of course, you know, there was still that MTV connection too with Gallon and Bender.
Yes. And this is going to maybe show a reason why it didn't work out, but they started to develop this in 2005. That is 4 years after this movie had come out.
Yep.
That has to have something to do with why they didn't pick it up, or they didn't really get it anymore. Like, it didn't hit at the right time. But regardless, we'll get to that later. So the development started in 2005, going into 2006. They wanted to release it for the 2007 fall season. Mm-hmm. Again, they went back to the roots. They got Bender, Moritz, and Gallon to reunite, and hey, let's do this. So the cast was kind of a bunch of unknowns. One that I want to point out was Jocelyn Donahue. Did you recognize her?
Dude, I love Jocelyn Donahue.
Yes.
So that was the thing, is like, I think there are, so if people listening to this, I don't know how I don't know yet how we're ultimately going to fall down this. I know I fall down on it. I don't know how you are.
Sure.
We don't talk about this beforehand. But for anyone wondering if they should like go watch this, I mean, it's only 22 minutes on YouTube. But I think, again, I was just talking about like how horror fans like me know Neil Moritz from, those early slasher films. Jocelyn Donahue is a little bit of a mini icon in the horror community because she stars in the amazing House of the Devil.
Yes,
which is just a fantastic like indie horror film. And then she's kind of one of those ones who, in the meantime, since then, you're just always happy to see her pop up in smaller things, including even a couple years ago, a small role in Dr. Sleep as the mom of Abra. So yeah, I really love Jocelyn Donahue, and she's basically the female lead in this.
Okay, cool. I'm obviously you recognized her, of course. You're the horror guy. But one thing I wanted to say was that, how I mentioned the movie was kind of based on She's All That. Well, this show is it's extremely based on the OC. So Jocelyn Donahue's character plays Melissa, aka Marissa, from the real show. And the funny thing is that the stars align on this podcast, Trev.
Yep. I was thinking of this while I was watching it. Yep.
Right? Bizarre, right? Because for no reason at all other than my own boredom and craving for nostalgia, I decided to finally go through the OC on my own time with some DVDs from my coworker. I just recently finished the series. Like what? A week ago, I think, Trev? Yep. A week ago, and all of a sudden we had this scheduled out fucking 2 months ago. And it just kind of, again, stars aligned, and all of a sudden, good thing I watched the OC, or maybe not good thing. But this show is very, very heavily pinpointed on that show.
Yeah, there's two main shows. This is as you would expect, it's parodying a lot of things. And it's interesting because I'm looking at the IMDb basic summary for it, and it says a parody of popular teen TV dramas such as Beverly Hills 90210, Dawson's Creek, and Laguna Beach. Now, first of all, I don't even know what Laguna Beach is. That rings no bells for me. I definitely see the Beverly Hills 90210 and Dawson's Creek in here. Those are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But I would say the two shows that it's most parodying are the OC, and then another one that has been very much in our discussions a lot lately, and that would be Buffy the Vampire Slayer for unfortunate reasons. But that's the other like kind of big one in this episode.
Yeah. And let's mention a couple other guest starring roles, if you will. But you just brought up Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Well, who plays Muffy Rabinowitz is Allison Brie from Community fame and Mad Men, and what's the Glow? Glow is on Netflix. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is pre all of that. So
yeah, this is like her up and coming, just trying to get into Hollywood phase. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to it, but she's probably like one of the funnier things in it. She has incredible comedic timing. She no wonder she was so good on Community, right?
This is only her third credit. She was in a short in 2004 called Stolen Poem. In 2006, she was in an episode of Hannah Montana. And then her next credit was playing Muffy the Vampire Slayer on another high school show.
The other big star, quote unquote, is actually Jennifer Lawrence. She has about 2 lines in it.
Yeah, blink and you miss it kind of thing.
Yes, but it's funny though because she just shows up, sees a janitor that's dying on the ground, played by H. John Benjamin, who's
the other big star.
Archer's voice from Archer.
Bob, of course, from Bob's Burgers.
Yeah, he needs to. I like how all his shows are just like the main character's name of the show. He's them.
But of course, in this, he was playing not another high school show, Johnson.
Is that what he was?
No, that was just making a joke about what you just said.
Oh,
Try to keep up with me here.
I wasn't really listening. I was moving on. Yeah, but he affectionately calls her Sweet Tits. So there's that. Other than that, I mean, honestly, that's really the backstory. That's some cast stuff. There's really
Well, I mean,
nothing.
the other recognizable actor in this, I suppose we should say, is, and there's only, so we said like this is obviously falling off of another teen movie. They brought in Galen and Bender to write and direct it. So you wonder, well, did any cast members come over? Only two, and really only one in a pretty significant way, and that's Eric Christian Olsen, who, if people remember from another teen movie, played Austin, kind of like the cocky, like douchebag jock guy. And he's in this in like the opening scene and near the end as well. So he's like the through line, playing a different character, but not too different.
No.
And then at the very end, we get a cameo from Jamie Presley, who is also a big part in another teen movie, and she shows up here. She shows up in like a joke bit about like coming soon. I don't know if that was actually setting up for her to be a returning character, if it's just a gag for the end. But
it's funny because
never know.
As somebody who just watched the OC, like all of this stuff, like they're playing legitimate characters from the OC, just so you know.
Yeah, and I just want, you said there's no one else we're talking about, but I will say really quickly, and again, going back to the horror realm, the male lead of this show is played by an actor named Josh Keefe. Now, Chris, I wouldn't expect you to recognize this guy at all, but I did, and I was like, why do I recognize this guy? And this goes back to something else that has been like a recent, conversation for us, or something that's been recently happening. And that is, you recently watched for the first time ever Return of the Living Dead, off of my suggestion. And then I suggested you also watch Return of the Living Dead 3. You quite liked both of them.
Yes.
And then I told you, yeah, I kind of have this nostalgic love for part 2, but really it's not that good. You don't need to watch it. And then I told you never to watch Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5. He is the star of Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5. Return of the Living Dead Necropolis and Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave, which are perhaps best remembered as they actually filmed some scenes at the actual Chernobyl. They got permission from the government and did like 2 or 3 days of filming there. And and you see these movies and you're like, these films are not worth risking the cancer they probably all have now for filming there. But so I recognized him I recognized him and had to look it up, but that's what I know him from.
Okay. Cool. Maybe that explains why he's so bad in this.
Well, this was before that, so we can't really use that excuse. But it shows, this and that both show like a lack of great decision making on his part.
Also, can I say, we're talking about the OC and stuff, and actually, again, there's a through line we've made is that, oh my God, Melinda Clarke is the star of Night of the
Return of the Living Dead Part 3.
Return of the Dead Part 3. And again, she was in the OC, and now we're doing a show that's parodying the OC, and it's all connected, everyone. It's all connected.
So it all comes together.
It's all connected through this podcast. Yes. Yeah, let's just get into it. Do you want to get into it? So what do you let's go. Yeah, what do you think of the show, Not Another High School Show?
It's not good. So this definitely falls more into how I thought I felt about another teen movie than what I really did when we revisited it. And to me, this film or this show was more indicative of those really bad Friedberg and Seltzer parodies that we were just talking about, like the superhero movie and the date movie and all those, that epic movie. This reminded me more of that. Not that it's not doing here's Superman showing up or anything. It's not doing that kind of humor necessarily, but it's also just, it's aiming pretty low in its humor, and it's pretty lazy. Like most of the jokes in this, I'd say, are pretty lazy, and I didn't crack a smile that often during this. It's only 22 minutes, and I think maybe 2 jokes made me laugh, and one was like a slight chuckle. I'll talk about the joke I actually liked a little later, but I wasn't too impressed with this, and I looked at this and I didn't see this as a great loss that we didn't get any more. How about you?
I'm similar. It's lazy in the sense that let me give you a little lesson in laziness here. The main character in the OC is Ryan. They've named him Brian. His father figure is named Sandy in the OC. They called him Dusty in this movie or show. Marissa and Summer in the OC have nicknames for each other, and in this one, instead of Coop and Summer, it's Cooch and Spring. So like, this is what we're dealing with here.
Well, and like the Dawson character is Lawson, right? It's
totally.
It's very Mad Magazine, but not near as clever as Mad Magazine. And I was thinking, like, so earlier you mentioned, I wanted to just make a slight correction here because I think it's important. I think it speaks to maybe what went wrong here. So you said earlier that they brought the entire creative team. Well, they brought the entire like major part of the creative team. But to go back to another teen movie, we should say when you say Mike Bender wrote another teen movie, you did allude to this, but the writing credits in another teen movie are Mike Bender, Adam J. Epstein, Andrew Jacobson, Phil Bowman, and Buddy Johnson.
Right.
And I know normally you kind of worry about movies with multiple writers, but I think in terms of these kind of films, that was probably a good thing, right? Because you think of like, oh, that's a writer's room. And it was probably all these people pitching jokes and then picking the best ones. Then you come to another high school show and it's just Mike Bender writing it.
Yeah.
And I think, that maybe shows here where if one person's handling it and they're not pulling in jokes from others, maybe that's why there's a worse ratio here of hits. That's just a thought, but yeah, I was definitely thinking about that while watching this.
That's why when you have a Buffy and Giles, you get a Muffy and Jeeves.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody just looked at him and was like, dude, that's not that funny.
And it also, like, this is probably, so you said, like, another teen movie came out right when Scary Movie 2 was hitting, right? And I think what Scary Movie and Scary Movie 2 did, now I like those, but I do think what they did was they kind of, between that and then at that point, the emergence of films like American Pie and Tomcats, it set comedy in like a pretty miserable, like sex comedy fad for quite a while, right? And this show too. Now there was jokes like that in another teen movie, but this is like this is going all out. Like, right, dude. One of the jokes is like, so Jocelyn Donahue's character, her best friend, is like constantly pulling out dildos and saying like, you should go play with this. And then when we first meet Muffy, there's a whole joke about how he's trying to explain to her how there's a werewolf loose in the school, but she thinks he's talking about how her pubic hair has gotten too long and she needs to groom it.
Dude, 3 minutes into the movie, there's a bunch of rape jokes.
Honey, I'd like you to meet our new son.
You are not gonna hurt me, you sick son of a bitch.
Maybe I should go. Don't be ridiculous, Brian. My wife is still upset about the last juvenile delinquent I brought home.
He tried to rape me, Dusty.
Now, Caitlin, you never did prove that.
You defended him in court.
Look, honey, I'm just trying to be a good lawyer here. Help a kid out. Make a difference in the world. And if that means that someone in this house might get a little raped, well, God damn it, that's a chance I'm willing to take.
Yeah, there's also like a real low-hanging fruit joke later about, kind of that old school, like, haha, 10-year-old kind of humor about miscommunicating and talking about balls, like on a volleyball court.
What do you think you're doing, little man Tate?
Sorry.
Nobody touches Sean Saunders' balls but me and my boys. You got it?
Yeah.
Let's go, boys. Grab my balls. Chad, set me.
And then there's a scene where they're at a diner and Melissa is wondering where her boyfriend's at. And the owner of the diner has this to say.
I knew it. Sean stood me up again.
Oh, let me give you a little advice, Mel. Guys like Sean Saunders, they're always gonna lie to you. In fact, he was in here earlier, finger banging some chick up on the jukebox. I mean, really, giving it to her good.
What?
The point is, you gotta suck it up. He's the best thing you got going, and that caboose of yours isn't getting any smaller, huh? Now, come on, how about a double cheeseburger?
Yeah, and it's that kind of humor that's just, it's not really funny. They just think you're going to laugh in terms of, oh, I can't believe they said that on TV, you know? Mm-hmm. But I think like even by 2007, this was becoming kind of pat and not really, you're not going to shock anyone anymore. So it just felt, again, lazy. Like lazy is the main word I'm going to use a lot probably during this.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned the word Borat, and by the time this show was set to air, we'd be living in a post-Borat world. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like pinnacle raunch, especially after Jackass. Oh, hell, when was Jackass 3? That was right before Borat, right? I believe in like 2005 or even same year. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Okay, but regardless, like the raunch factor was kind of in, and it peaked, and a dildo on TV, I don't think was gonna do it for anybody.
Jackass 3 wasn't until 2010, but you're right that Jackass was definitely like already in the ether.
Okay, that's more or less okay.
Yeah, and even now, just like some of the jokes here, I feel like have been done better in other places. So there's an ongoing joke where Melissa's father is married to a classmate of hers. So her stepmom is only 1 year older than her. And there's a whole joke with like, when she's at school, the stepmom is a fellow student who's kind of bullying her and telling her, "You better come home straight from school or you're grounded." And I was just thinking of how that joke that's done a little bit better in the Bill and Ted movies, right? With like how the dad keeps their dads keep like marrying the girl who used to be in school with them, and that kind of like runs through them. Yeah, and so that's just like done a little better there. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, like.
You know who I did like we mentioned before. I thought Allison Brie was pretty funny. She plays Sarah Michelle Gellar as Buffy, and she's very earnest but cartoony at the same time. Like she knows exactly the type of movie she's in, but she's taking everything deathly serious.
Yeah, I mean they only give her.
Well, I was just going to say the through line of it all, honestly, I did find this bit funny. I thought every time she was on screen, I did chuckle. And the through line is Jeeves, her Giles, has told her that there's a teenage wolf running around the school. So obviously Teen Wolf. And so she's like looking around the school for Teen Wolf for like the entire episode. She pops up a few times and she's kind of like, there's this one really great bit there. She just decides that the janitor is the Wolfman. Yeah. And she's just in the background killing this guy while our main characters are just kind of talking and having a conversation.
Listen! There you are! I waited for you on the dock for over an hour this morning.
Sorry. There wasn't room in the rowboat for Brian, you, and your ladder.
So what are you insinuating, Lawson? That me and my ladder don't have a place in your life anymore?
Charlie. Of course there's a place for you in my life. Who else would I let in my bed without the fear of getting an erection? Gotta go. Gotta start my show.
Die, Rufus teenagers! No, you're a lot shorter than I am.
Kids.
What's your name, sweetest?
Help! Somebody stab the janitor in the heart!
Like that bit I liked. I like that. I thought it was a visual gag that worked really well, and she's game for it, and it wasn't so obvious that it was like so in the background. I thought that was a nice bit. How about you? Did you at least find it, somewhat humorous?
I guess like somewhat, and I wonder how much of that is just because I naturally like Allison Brie, and I think you're right. Like, sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of hers. You're right that she's definitely does not embarrass herself here or anything. Like she is putting her all into it, but it was kind of one joke over and over, right? And even though it's a decent joke, but I'll say, too, the whole Teen Wolf thing, this gets into something I'm confused about this show, too. Because it's not another high school show. And as we said, it's mostly parodying these, high school shows that we all know and all recognize the tropes when they bring them in. There's clear moments where you're like, okay, this is obviously mostly the OC. Oh, here's Buffy. Oh, here's, when they go to a diner called Pat's Pit, that's obviously the Peach Pit. So you understand this is 90210. The one friend is clearly meant to be like the Andrea character from 90210. These are all things I recognize. And then fucking like Teen Wolf shows up.
Yeah.
And this is like before Teen Wolf was an MTV show, which is a very different version anyways. This is like the full-on Michael J. Fox Teen Wolf. And hey, that's a movie. And not like that, but that's like an 80s movie. And this is parodying all kind of more like 90s and 2000s stuff. And this felt like more something that should have been in not another teen movie than it should have been in like this show. And then so that's like it's a confusing into like where that was going. And then the other part of it was the Dawson character. I understand. So like Dawson, I believe on Dawson's Creek was kind of obsessed with movies, right? Like that was like a thing. And then Lawson in this, they turn that to just he's obsessed with Hugh Jackman. Mm-hmm. And it's like not funny the first time it comes up, and then it just keeps being brought up, and it just seems like so like centralized of a joke, but they never realize it's not funny. And it's just like, I don't know, it goes nowhere really, other than like having him show up to a regular party dressed like Wolverine because he thinks it's a costume party. But I just didn't get it. Like I don't know.
Well, it's because his name is Lawson for Dawson, but his character is actually based on Seth from the OC.
Okay, so Seth's the one who's obsessed with movies. Okay.
Yes,
I'm not a Dawson's Creek guy. Sorry,
no,
everything I know about Dawson's Creek, I've inferred from my other friends. But.
Yeah, I don't think I know anything from Dawson's Creek. But yeah, from the OC, yeah, Seth is like extremely obsessed with movies and pop culture. Like that's his character, and comic books especially.
It was funny though watching this on YouTube. So Lawson's room is covered in movie posters of Hugh Jackman movies. but they had to blur them all out.
Yeah.
Obviously, because they didn't get like the rights to them when they, uploaded this or whatever. But because it's Hugh Jackman, it was a fun game to like look at all of them and try to figure out which poster was which. I remember when there's like one particular where he's standing in front of one and it's blurred out, and I'm like, well, that's the Swordfish poster. You can't fool me. So I was having more fun playing guess the Hugh Jackman poster than I was watching the scene.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just take a moment here and talk about like what the general like story of this episode is, because we talk about the shows it's like inspired by, but there is like a little narrative here, and it only got to do one episode, and it tells a fairly complete story. Let's give them their due at least, and even though we're kind of saying it didn't all work for us, let's talk about the story a little bit.
Sure. Well, again, it opens up with Brian and his brother stealing a car.
And his brother is the one played by Eric Christian Olsen.
Correct. And it is almost identical framing to the first scene of the OC. And in this case, instead of the brother taking off in the car and then them both getting arrested, the car explodes. And it cuts to Brian in jail, and his lawyer is sitting with him, which his name is Dusty Goldstein, and he decides, hey, I'm just going to bring you home. Again, the OC. He goes home to this huge mansion, and basically Brian is from the wrong side of the tracks, and now he's going to live with a super rich family. Then there's high school shenanigans. Melissa... Sorry?
Well, he discovers like his next door neighbor is Melissa.
Yes, his next door neighbor is this hot Melissa.
We see her home drama, like we said. Has a stepmother that she can't stand because it's a fellow student. She has a shitty boyfriend, so we see the complication already. Like him and Melissa instantly hit it off. I guess that was maybe a little amusing, like the saying "hey" over and over to each other. Yeah. But yeah, they hit it off. But then right away, the shitty boyfriend shows up. So we're getting all of our tropes set up, and then we go to school the next day, and that's where we learn about Muffy there as well, and that's that. Like you said, the scene between Muffy and Jeeves is completely pulled from the first interaction between Buffy and Giles in the pilot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Mm-hmm. In the library, and him pulling out the book and giving it to her, but telling her in this case she has to go after a werewolf. So that's like and then they said, well, then we just get the general high school shenanigans of Brian trying to like make it through the school. Instantly like kind of forming a rivalship with her boyfriend, and leading to where you expected to lead, a high school party at the end. Because they only got to do the one episode, I do think like if they'd had more time and like more writers, you could take like this story and just make it into like a 90-minute movie probably. Because I was thinking watching this, another problem I was having with this, and just generally like when it was done, I was like, well, I don't regret not seeing any more. I think it's really hard to do a weekly spoof kind of show anyway.
That's exactly the problem.
Yeah, and so I was thinking of like, I love Police Squad, right? But Police Squad, people always talk about, oh, it's a shame it didn't last longer. But like those 6 episodes of Police Squad are so good. But then you think like, how long could they have kept that going? And it's maybe ultimately better that it became a little cult thing, and that allowed them to make the 3 Naked Gun movies instead. And I just think there's something about the movies where when you don't have to come up with new jokes every week, and you're just working on this 90-minute thing, or actually most of these are usually like 80 minutes or so, you just put so much more work into it. You refine it a little bit more. Coming up with this crap, like this kind of consistent, because there's a joke every 2 seconds here. Yeah. Coming up with that every week, and they're all also parodying something, that's going to get very old very fast. This show would have been pretty dead on the vine pretty quickly if it had got past this episode.
Well, like, okay, Joel Gallen and Mike Bender are MTV award show Comedy Central guys, okay? Now, this 22-minute episode feels like a bunch of those, like, you remember a bunch of those, like, spoof interstitials. You remember the MTV Movie Awards when we used to watch those? And at the beginning, there'd be, like, Will Ferrell, and he was playing the architect from Matrix Reloaded, and, like, the hosts go in and out of each movie that's nominated, and they spoof it, right? This feels like that, but for 22 minutes. Mm-hmm. And there's no way in hell I could see this being done for 24 episodes a season. Because remember, everybody, this is at the time where shows were picked up to 20 episodes plus. I just watched The OC. The first season of The OC is 27 episodes long. Like, that's insane. So nowadays, maybe in like a Netflix thing, a 10-episode series, like you just said, like actually like kind of like Wet Hot American Summer. That works out really well, but they're not specifically spoofing things. And I think you dig your own grave by saying, and like kind of pigeonholing yourself to that idea.
Yeah, because the thing about this first episode is, so in the first episode, you've nailed what everyone knows about the OC. You've got all the jokes about that. Then you've hit on the basic Buffy the Vampire Slayer joke. And then you've hit on like some of the basic tropes from 90210, right? You've hit on all the basic stuff. So once you get into like later episodes, you don't have that luxury anymore. At this point, what are you going to be doing? Are you actually going to be parodying episode 18 of the OC?
Totally.
You know, you're going to continually like limit your audience to people who've only seen every episode of all these shows. When you can't just parody the basic tropes anymore, that's why these work better as movies, because movies allow you to just parody the basic tropes. A TV show that goes on, you're going to have to get into like further things, or you're going to have to hope more teen shows come on or something so you can have like more stuff to parody.
Hell, there's a scene at the end where Mason, Brian's brother, shows up, played again by, what's his name, Eric Christian Olsen, and they parody directly the season 3 finale of the OC.
Who taught you to think like that? Mason? But that's impossible. Not if I had to fake my own death to escape from a Nicaraguan drug cartel. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I realized that you and we don't have to be bad boys anymore. We don't? That's right, Brian. We can be good boys now. Heck, for the first time in my life, I can wear a cardigan, say that I'm excited about my future. So what do you say, huh? You want to give your big brother a hug? My cardigan.
Hey,
You just shot my brother!
After what you did for me, I owed you one. Brian, from the first time you squinted at me, I knew that I had finally found someone as depressed as I am.
So they do the gunshot scene, the famous gunshot scene. First of all, The Lonely Island did this better. You know?
Well, let me just say in general, I know you're talking about the Dear Sister SNL skit.
Yeah.
But overall, The Lonely Island parodied the OC better with a web series they did called The Boo, which was like such a better version of this, because they, instead of just being, you know, a parody of like scenes, like individual tropes, they just took like the OC and did a completely absurdist version of it, called The Boo. If anyone hasn't seen The Boo and you like The Lonely Island, you like Andy Samberg, please go to YouTube and check it out.
Speaking of the end, it is pretty funny that when Jamie Presley does show up as the cameo as Brian's mom, let me just remind everybody, when she was in Not Another Teen Movie, she was like the super fucking hot cheerleader, right? And then only 5 years later, they cast her as a mom.
Yeah,
that's just quintessential Hollywood for you, I felt.
But there's something there's actually something kind of incredible about Jamie Presley, where you can see that, like, that actually, that's worth making fun of, and it is something Hollywood does all the time. But Jamie Presley does have this look to her where she can play really young or really old, like especially around this time, right? I shouldn't say really old, but I buy her as like a mom.
Sure.
But I would also, seeing her show up at the end of this, you would kind of still buy her as like a high school cheerleader too. And I will say, like, when she shows up just for that little tag at the end, it really made me sad that she just hadn't been in the whole episode. Because I know one of the main things we talked about when we watched the movie was, and we should just say it now since we're talking about her, why the hell isn't Jamie Presley a bigger star? It's just baffling to me, because she's like, you know, obviously she's gorgeous, but she's also super, super funny, has killer comedic timing, can play like a variety of different roles. You look at how funny she was in a brief part in Joe Dirt. She's great on My Name is Earl. She's awesome in another teen movie. I feel like Hollywood like really like dropped the ball on her. They really missed the boat. I mean, she's worked consistently. I'm not saying she's had a bad career, but she should be like a much bigger star than she is. And I think this show would have benefited more. Clearly would have benefited from having her be a more consistent presence. So that's why I do wonder, would she have stuck around as the mom if the show had gone to series? That maybe would have helped. Not much, but the show still would have had the same problems we're talking about. But I would have been more inclined to maybe watch a few more episodes if I knew Jamie Presley was in it.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because the only time anybody talks about Jamie Presley nowadays is when they just bring up Margot Robbie or Samara Weaving, and they just do like a side-by-side, and they're like, Hollywood knows nothing. And then, or like they just keep casting the same people. And then I'm over here thinking, well, they don't cast Jamie Presley in enough. So yeah.
Maybe they should do, like, someone should make a movie with those three as like a team taking care of something. That'd be great.
Or like you just said, you can see Jamie Presley as maybe a mother, 2 daughters type of thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Little family drama.
Or
all girlfriends. No?
Okay.
Just me? Okay.
Wow, you sound like what, are you getting ready to write the next episode in another high school show?
I'm in the Hollywood, baby. All right.
Let me just briefly talk about the joke I did like, since because you mentioned some ones you did, and I teased earlier that there was a joke that actually made me laugh.
Sure.
And that is at the party at the end. So this will actually feed into, before we get to the joke I like, we have to set up the other big cameo in this.
Yeah.
Big cameo, but like one that like makes you sit up a little bit just because you're like, hey, there's someone I recognize, and that is when Andy Dick shows up, playing, was he Bonerman, which is a takeoff on Wooderson from Dazed and Confused. So another one we're like, wait, why is like there a Wooderson parody in this? That's a teen movie, and that's even like Dazed and Confused. It's kind of weird to think about like in the same context as all the like other teen movies since it's a period piece. Whatever. I just like that he shows up, and let's talk about Andy Dick in a second. But I will just say for this scene, he is doing the worst Matthew McConaughey impersonation I've maybe ever heard.
You just gonna stand there and do nothing?
No?
Well, that's funny, because you look like you just about to shot yourself, partner.
Who the hell are you?
Name's Kenny Bonerman. The folks around here just call me Kenny. Kind of a school legend in these school parts.
You're still in high school?
Yeah. 23 years. Learning disability. As in, I can't learn to stop loving that poontang.
So there it is. Not a great McConaughey. You wouldn't even know it like listening to it, but he is dressed as Wooderson, and he's doing, they're clearly doing the visual cue of it. But let me just quickly ask you, Chris, like where do you fall on Andy Dick? I know how that sounds. As I said it, I realized.
Well, Trev, where do I fall on Andy Dick? I felt bad recently seeing that he had a cameo on Cameo.com, where he was selling them while he sat on waiting for the bus. I don't know. He's kind of a sad individual. I'm not sure how to how I feel about him, because I never really watched news radio. Did you?
Yeah, I really like news radio. So that's so with Andy Dick, it's more complicated now because in more recent years we found out even more about how unfortunately some very problematic issues with him and some allegations of sexual misconduct and stuff. And he definitely seems like someone who has consistently let his demons get the better of him. And it's really that case of like for a long time I was hoping he was like going to conquer his demons, and for a little bit you were hoping, oh, okay, if he's got these demons, they're just affecting his life and that's frustrating. I hope he conquers them. But now it seems more like it's that unfortunate thing where it's like, no, he's really hurt some other people. But I would say like putting that part aside, not that you should, but like before I found out about that stuff, if you had asked me like, what do I think of Andy Dick? It was always complicated because I do think he's really funny. And I think he was like great on the Ben Stiller show. I don't know if you ever saw that. So Ben Stiller had his like sketch comedy show in the 90s, which was Ben Stiller, Bob Odenkirk, Jeanine Garofalo, and Andy Dick. They were the cast. He was good on that. I really liked him in news radio. I think he's very funny when he pops up in certain things. I thought his show, he had the Andy Dick show on MTV, which is his own sketch comedy show. I liked that quite a bit. But then also like every time you could tell his demons were getting the better of him, he would pop up in these like little straight to video things or whatever. And it was just like, it was really embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then a lot of his like public appearances and just like all the controversy and all the dumb arrests and everything. It was always kind of like hard to justify liking him. So yeah. Oh, it's complicated all around. I was just curious if you had any thoughts on him, because I know like he's a complex figure in the comedy world.
Complex, and I think you kind of nailed it when you said kind of embarrassing. Like I don't want to be mean or anything about it, but it's like I don't know. He kind of gives me the willies, when I see Andy Dick anymore. You know what I mean?
He seems like a guy who squandered a lot of clear potential talent.
Big time.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know the story about how he was supposed to play like Mugatu in Zoolander. Like that part was like written for him, and then I can't remember if they actually started filming with him or I don't remember the entire story, but I do know obviously he was replaced by Will Ferrell, and instead they just gave Andy Dick like the little role of like the masseuse in that one scene,
right?
And he was like, him and Ben Stiller had a relationship, and that whole thing was, and Ben Stiller has been very open about how he had to replace him because at that point Andy Dick was just not in a position to like work on a film for like an entire schedule. So yeah, it's again, he's definitely ruined a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is all coming to me so his scene though does set up a joke I quite like, and that is when he tells Brian that the reason he should be able like to take the bully out and like why like what his advantage is that he has a hooded sweatshirt. And that already got me kind of laughing because it was speaking to that just like that kind of cliche of like, oh yeah, whenever there is like a bad boy character in a teen show, he's wearing like the gray hoodie. And I like that they established that and they made a joke of it. But then when they took the joke a step further and they have the confrontation and he puts the hoodie on, and I love that you actually hear when if you listen to the background, I'm a big fan of background jokes. I think sometimes those can be the funniest jokes, just what you hear people say. And he puts the hoodie up and someone in the background goes, oh, he must have grew up in the streets. And that made me laugh. And then, but then the jerky boyfriend just punches him in the face and knocks him out. Like it doesn't matter. So like that all together, that whole run of joke, that was where I was like, okay, this is like the good bit that I like.
What are you gonna do about it, tiny dancer? This.
It's so rugged. It's versatile.
Oh, he must have grown up in the streets. That's how we do it in the LP BCH, bitch. Does that make you wet?
But that's kind of it, really.
Yeah, there's a couple chuckles in it, but just overall, it feels like a series of YouTube shorts or something, and it would never have amounted to anything more than that. Other than, well, you made a good point. I mean, this could have been actually the feature length sequel to Not Another Teen Movie, just Not Another High School Show, and just do it again, just put it on the big screen. Who gives a shit? I don't need to see a high school show parody on TV. I can see it in the theater. I don't really care.
Yeah, so I don't really know the story of like why this didn't go forward. I imagine just when they turned it in, the executives looked at it and probably said all the things we just said. They probably looked at this one episode and were like concerned about its potential to go beyond this one because you can already see the cracks forming here. Just imagine if they had a few more.
Again, it was raunchy, but it would have been raunchy for TV. I really think so. They actually bleep out a fuck at one point, and then another swear. I can't remember what it is, but all the sexual stuff too. There's no way that would have flown on network TV in the States.
Well,
no
but
way.
This wasn't network. This was Comedy Central, and Comedy Central already had South Park going. So
that's a good point. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
I'm sure they were actually kind of encouraged to go raunchy because I think that was kind of starting to become the brand a little bit at that point too.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would have affected them too much, but I think the bigger concern was, could this really hold up to a show? And I don't think it could have.
No.
I think you get everything you need from this first episode, and that's not even much. But I would say maybe because it's so short and because it's readily available on YouTube, I think maybe just for pure curiosity's sake, for everybody who wants to see Allison Brie's first thing, and like you said, she's kind of fun in it. If you want to see a brief appearance from a very young Jennifer Lawrence talking to a dying H. John Benjamin, you'll get little like, oh, that's interesting moments from it. Yeah. But we're not saying you're going to laugh a lot. It's more just like kind of bafflement.
Yeah. So that's another episode of Failure to Series, our spin-off show of the regular show, Failure to Franchise. So if this is your first foray into our show, look back at our feed. Check out what we got. But this is the spin-off show. Failure to Franchise is about movies, and this one's about failed TV pilots. So, this was fun. I love little ones like this. Little bite-size glimpses into Hollywood's history.
Mm-hmm. Well, to call this Hollywood history is a little highfalutin, I think. But
Trev, I mean, you would be the worst sales guy. We're trying to sell the show. Okay.
All right. To look into Allison Brie history. Let's put it that way.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Back to the Brie-assance.
Sure. The beginning of the Brie-assance. Well, not really, because it never even made it to air. But imagine a world where this head got picked up and she was on this show for like years and she wasn't in Community. She wasn't in Mad Men. Never got Glow.
She would have ended up like Andy Dick.
A fate worse than death. Sorry. Anyways. All right. So yeah, we'll be back with one of these, at some point. I don't know. We got some ideas, but in the meantime, soon we will be starting our theory in April and looking at our King Arthur movies.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that. So
yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, this was fun. All right. We'll talk to you all soon. I don't know. I don't know how to end this. Chris, help. Get us out of this.
I am. Trev, get the fuck out of here. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See ya. Okay, bye.